So I had 2 brain aneurysms that got picked up and had surgery. So it's been a very interesting... People on their deathbed don't go, gee, I wish I'd taken things a little safer. I wish I'd been more cautious. Sometimes we just need to take risks.
Meet Mark Bilton, an award-winning CEO turned leadership strategist who has led global enterprises across 40 countries. With over 20 years of CEO experience, Mark is also a passionate Christian, founding the Monday Movement to inspire professionals to integrate faith and work, creating lasting legacies in both business and life.
Great culture and large companies don't often go together. So they think they do, but the people who actually do the real work in the companies, guys. I was a fairly angry young man, I think part of the environment I was in, reacting to that. And so digging myself a hole as far as my own life was concerned. Quite depressed and almost suicidal. And then one night...
Welcome to the show, Mark. So great to see you again.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for the invite.
So before we get started, I always ask my guests to bring a special show and tell item. What have you got here for us today?
I have got a photograph, which I can just show you there. So this was me 4 months ago. So I had 2 brain aneurysms that got picked up and had surgery. So it's been a very interesting couple of months.
Wow, that is, a huge operation.
So I'm glad you haven't had breakfast because of that photograph.
Yeah. And so what happened there? Can you take us back a little bit?
Yeah. So I had had enough of that. I'll put that down. So I just got a bit dizzy at the gym and went to the doc and they said, I'll get a heart check, which I did, which was fine. And he said, do you have any headaches or anything? And I said, just a mild headache. And he said, look, if it's been ongoing, you should get a brain scan. I said, doc, that's just, a complete waste of time. But seeing as you asking me, I'll go and do it. So I went and did it. And they said, you've got 2 brain aneurysms. We need to get in there because it's a time bomb. If they go off, you won't have a chance to ring an ambulance.
Oh my God.
So very grateful for that intervention. And it's a fix. And I have hair, which is good. So it's over the scar. So it's been quite a intervention in my life in the last few months.
And I mean, were you a healthy kind of guy? You feel like you did everything by the books, and when it happened, what was going through your mind at the time?
Yeah, reasonably happy on those things. It's a genetic thing. It's just one of those, things that just can bite you from time to time. But no, look, super grateful that it got picked up. And it's been a little quieter the last few months as sort of recovering from all that. And it's given me a great chance to sort of rethink about life's priorities, work priorities, and just sort of dial up on some of those life things. Yeah.
Well, I definitely want to touch on that part, definitely. But before I go on, I guess one thing when I was reviewing all of your content and even on your about page, one keyword that kind of pop up a lot is the word honor. And so would love to hear from you, where in your life did honor popped up and that it's become a number one value that guide you?
Yeah, look, I think it's important, particularly in a workplace environment. The workplace for a lot of people is almost a trial, something that they sort of have to do in order to be able to get ahead and pay the mortgage and things. But I think there's an opportunity in the workplace to create an environment where people can do really, really well. But at the core of that, the foundation of that, is an ability to honour those around you, particularly as a leader. So what I've always endeavoured to do is whether I'm dealing with the chairman of the board or someone wrapping parcels in a warehouse, they have the same intrinsic value. They might have different roles, get paid different amounts. But for me, that culture of honour is sort of all-inclusive, treating people well, treating others like you want to be treated yourself, and just giving people time and respect regardless of whatever their position might be.
And how much of that is influenced because of your Christian background? Was it taught when you were growing up? It's emphasized in your family? Or, would love to hear the origin of where that really resonated with you.
Yeah, I wasn't raised in a Christian environment at all. And so that was something that happened in my early 20s. So there was a series of events that just sort of started this whole spiritual journey. And I think that's a very foundational part of my life. I don't necessarily think of it as integrated into the honour. I think there was something within me that always wanted to do that, just wired a bit that way. And also I think coming up through the ranks in leadership. So I went to a public school, started my
And you're from the UK?
UK originally.
Yeah.
But
You went to
raised-
school when you were young then, or when did you actually move over to the, APAC area?
I was 14. Yeah, so definitely had sort of humble beginnings, if you like. Started my leadership career as a shop assistant in a menswear store in South Auckland with a zoology degree. So not a recommended start. If you want to
Zoology, so
Yeah.
that with animals, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So not a recommended leadership start. And I think that having sort of grown up through the ranks, if you like, sales person, and then sales rep, sales manager, GM, and then into sort of more CEO roles. I sort of been at every level of the organisation and I recognise the value that everyone contributes, not just from the top.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about your time growing up. Like, did you have entrepreneur parents? Were you taught about business early on? How did you get interested in business in the first place?
Yep. No, would be the answer to that question. So my dad was in the army, in the British Army. So we moved around, used to move around a lot, which I think in hindsight has sort of helped equip me for change. We used to move every sort of 18 months, 2 years, different places. Two of my brothers were born in Germany. My dad annoyed someone at some stage and we got posted to the Outer Hebrides, islands off the top of Scotland. Yeah. So quite a diverse background, and then moved to New Zealand, aged 14.
And that was also because of your family. You moved to New Zealand then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what was growing up like in terms of, were they very supportive and always guiding you, or were they like my parents who were always telling me that you're not going to amount to anything?
Yeah.
And then I had to kind of prove to them.
Yeah.
And look, I don't regret that, and because it made me become really ambitious, like I'm going to prove to you wrong. But was there anything like that growing up that made you go, I want to be successful because of the way my parents brought me up?
Yeah, it was moderately dysfunctional, I suppose, would be probably the sort of polite way of saying it.
Yeah.
So not a particularly good upbringing, left home as soon as I could.
How old was that?
I was 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
I ran away from home at 14.
Oh, did you? Wow, okay, that's next level.
Yeah.
So not particularly, reconciled with them later in life, which was great. They had their own Christian experiences as well as adults, and it changed their lives a lot. So, yeah.
Okay. So they were quite easygoing, allowed you to, you're fighting when you were younger, but later on when they were still supportive of your journey after that, you've proven that you're adult then.
So when we reconnected, it was different again.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to so you found out that you were at uni and you discovered Christianity.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. Look, I was a fairly angry young man, I think, part of the environment I was in, and reacting to that, and so digging myself a hole as far as my own life was concerned. Quite depressed and almost suicidal. And then one night
At what age would you say that you were quite depressed and angry, like from what age you remember?
18 to 21.
Okay.
Yeah, was the kind of the core of this. During that time, bumped into a lot of Christians. In fact, I couldn't cross the road without being accosted by Christians and the sharing about Jesus, which I did not want to hear. It was nothing. It was kind of the antithesis of anything that I wanted to be involved with. And then I had this choice basically one night: did I want to end my life, or did I want to maybe give this God that I didn't know a chance to have an influence? So I gave my life to God at that point. I think I swore in my transition into that environment. And look, it wasn't an easy road back from that, but from that point in time, opportunities opened, things changed. The sky was a bit bluer, and I definitely had an experience that changed my life.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big deal here. You were suicidal. You wanted to end your life. I mean, take us back to that time where what were you thinking, and what made you decide, you know what, no, like there is still a future ahead for me?
Yeah, I think it was, I've got to give a lot of credit to many Christians who were willing to take on my not receptive manner and share about Jesus and challenge me on who was he and who did he say he was, and if he was who he said he was, what does that mean for us today? And so that whole experience over those 3 years wasn't in a church environment. It was outside of church. It was very much around having a sort of one-on-one relationship with God. And I think that was His divine intervention at that point that night, and just a revelation that changed the direction I was going.
Do you mind talking about that night, or is it too raw?
Yeah, it's still pretty raw.
Okay.
But I was thinking about the best way to exit, and all the conversations that I had over those previous 3 years, and all the sharing that people had done, just all sort of came back in a flood.
Yeah.
And so I sort of yielded to that and said, okay, if you can do something with my life, let's do it.
Yeah. I think this is a very important subject, because as I started to just research more around the topic of happiness, and I was looking at stats, and I was mortified to know that 75% of suicidals, especially in Australia, were men, and at the age of about 46. And even knowing that, because I have a lot more friends with kids and stuff, the ages are getting a bit younger too. Kids are getting more into mental health issues and suicide. And so I guess looking back, if you could share any advice, if someone's watching this, maybe they themselves are going through it, or they have kids that they're really needing to help to rescue them out, what would you say?
I think there's a lot more awareness of those things now than there ever was, as far as interventions and ability for people to be able to reach out. I think we all have a responsibility for those around us to, if things aren't quite right, people are becoming more withdrawn or acting out, then asking them, hey, you okay? And the ability to be able to do that is much more. It's much easier now than it used to be, I think, and also the opportunities for people for counselling and those things. So I think if you're struggling, get help, and don't even think about it twice. If you see people around you that, ask them a question.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what was life like after that? So you made a decision, you're like, I'm going to give myself to Christ and I'm going to work on myself.
Yeah.
Between then and you becoming the group managing director of Gloria Jean, take us through that kind of gap between there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an opportunity to show divine intervention, because if you're a shop assistant at a menswear store in South Auckland with a zoology degree, you don't normally end up running.
Did you do anything with the zoology degree at all? Did you work with the animals?
No. nothing at all.
Yeah.
It was part of my conversion experience as well.
Did you pick zoology because you love animals, or is it because it was a higher score? Because for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I picked it based on my enter score.
Yeah. I had an unusual approach to education and my degree. So I looked at, I don't want to work on a Wednesday, so I didn't want to work any more than 2 days at a time. So I said, okay, so I looked at all the courses that didn't have anything on a Wednesday, and then I looked at the pass rates for those courses. So I did the easiest possible degree you could do.
That is such an
and not work on a
strategy.
Wednesday. Yeah. Might say something about my character.
You're always looking for shortcuts, which is good.
Shortcuts are good.
Yep.
So that was the start. Look, I think I had a desire to do leadership. I think that's just something that was innate within me, and I ended up as a sales rep for a jean company. I did that for a while, and then got offered a role as a sales manager in a textile business, and so started to do that. I was only in that role for about 9 months, and the GM of that business left, set up in opposition. And the owner of the company panicked and said, Mark, you're the sales manager. Yes, congratulations, you're the new general manager. So I ended up with a general manager's position at a very young age.
How old was that?
I would have been 30, with no leadership
and
training.
how big
at
was
all.
the company at the time?
Relatively small, about
Okay.
5-6 million, 20 people.
But a great title, general manager.
Got the title. It looks good on the CV. And I just put the whole company in a room, because you can put them in a room, and just said, what are we going to do? And worked. So we worked together on the solution, and the organisation turned very quickly, did really well, grew, and then got acquired by a larger organisation. And they said, look, we'll put you through an MBA. I said, I'm finally going to get some
now the real education comes through.
We'll get you to join YPO, the Young Presidents Organisation back then.
This is where you've been a member for a long time now.
Yeah, 23 years now, so which might date myself a little bit. And that was, I mean, those are two very important parts for me. Was doing the MBA was great. It sort of rounded me out, got got me really interested in a few things. And YPO, so Charles Parsons was the person who said, you have to join YPO. You have to join a forum. You have to go to every event. If they ask you to do anything, you have to say yes. And I'm thinking, what is this? Some kind of weird cult, funny handshake club or something? But it was a seminal moment that got me more into leadership. So I ran some of his divisions, then his organisation, and then went off, ran a public company for a while. Came back, ran the Charles Parsons Group, which was 20 different businesses in 6 countries with about 1,000 staff, and then ran Hagemeyer Brands, which was owned by Rexel, which was a listed French company, and also.
And so when you say ran, you were hired as that general manager for these companies now?
Yes. So I ran 6 different companies over 20 years, public company and a couple of multinationals as well. So mainly in the turnaround space, but all sorts of different industries as well.
Yep.
Textiles, importing, distribution, manufacturing, coffee, and consumer electronics, so all sorts of different things.
So when did Gloria Jean's come into place?
So that was my last corporate role. So the last almost decade, I've been doing leadership advisory work. So it's been a different season. So Gloria Jean's Group MD there was my last sort of corporate role. So looking after 40 countries, an organisation in all sorts of trouble. And that was a wild ride for a couple of years getting that turned around prior to the sale to Retail Food Group.
So looking back at the fact that you were able to succeed even without a degree, it was really just learning on the job, and then you eventually got the MBA. What would you say now to someone who's watching, maybe they've got kids that, we're always thinking whether education like the MBA would be helpful or not? Like what would be your take on?
There's never a good time.
Yeah.
It's like I did the Australian Institute of Company Directors course as well. And I was always waiting for someone else to pay for that in my employment capacity. So there's never an easy time to get educated. But I think, look, just do it. Whatever that might look like for you, whether it's short courses, whether it's a full MBA, which takes a lot of time and effort.
How long is like an MBA?
I did mine in two batches. So I did 2 years doing a postgrad diploma in new venture management because I have an interest in entrepreneurs. It's always been a passion of mine. And then took a year off and then came back and did the 2 years part-time to finish it off.
Yeah.
But there's all sorts of different avenues now as well, the mixes of online and in-person and lots of ways to learn and never stop learning. Like I'm in my 60s now and I'm still learning things.
Yeah. You're right. Like anything we learn, it kind of somehow you can use something there. And I remember picking my course, which was international business at the time, which I don't understand. But now I'm in that space of offshore recruitment. I'm like, oh, international business is still similar. Yep. Would you say there's anything that you've learned in your zoology course that you can apply? You have applied to business?
I have to dig deep for this. Look, it was an interest at the time. But it's funny now that organisation behaviour and leadership is changed a lot given how dynamic the environment is and how fast things are changing and the rise of technology. And so the pace of things is challenging the traditional hierarchical structures of organisations. So everything is tending more towards a much more organic model. But we don't really even have the language. So
when you say organic model, can you explain?
More fluid, more like an ecosystem rather than straight lines and 2x2 matrices and triangles, and everything was in leadership and organisational behaviour is very much built on an industrial model, whereas now I think we need to move more to an organic thinking. It's more about relationships. Even organisations themselves are much more reliant on partnering and relationships up and down ecosystems, and organically things are a lot flatter. You don't have one person doing all the thinking because you can't think fast enough. So organisations are changing a lot. So some of those biological, ecological thinkings are, I think, starting to become more relevant.
Yeah. And how do you make changes in big organisation? Because even in my size, I'm a smallish business, and already with, let's say, 20 internal staff, I'm already finding that challenge to make changes, and it's just you don't move as fast. And even though you're wanting to adopt new ideas or new things, it's just slower already.
Yeah.
And so, what's your take on how bigger companies can move a bit faster? Like what are the what are the roadblocks? What are the things that they're doing to limit themselves from moving faster?
Yeah. I think clarity is important, like getting super, super clear on where you're going, what your priorities are.
And that takes time. You might have to then strategize and spend sessions
For sure.
planning.
Yep.
But you're saying that by doing that,
Yep.
it'll go faster.
Absolutely. So, getting people in a room, collaborating, building lots of transparency. So very simple outcomes, very simple set of key priorities. And people own what they help to create. So taking the time to make sure there's collaboration and input, deciding what that looks like, getting very, very clear on what the priorities are and where we're going. And a short list is better than a long list. Like if you're trying to do 20 things, you won't get any done. If you're trying to do
How
3
many
things,
is a
you'll
good
get them
number?
done.
If it's not 20?
Well, Gloria Jean's, for instance, it was absolute systemic failure across multinational, like going backwards in all sorts of trouble. It was 9 things. And we went very transparent.
Is this 9
on
things
that.
for the whole company?
Yeah.
Yep.
everybody.
Like from the strategic level, 9 areas that we're working on.
Yep. So we went very open and transparent with all stakeholders around this is what we're going to try and achieve.
In that year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you get alignment. People stop doing things that may not be aligned to that and start going, oh, okay, this is my piece as far as that's concerned. So they get clarity, get a sense of purpose. You tend to it's easier to get buy-in when there's simple things, particularly if you're very transparent around why, not just what you're doing. So you're managing more leading by outcomes rather than process. Can go a long way to helping do that.
Yeah. And how do you empower the team to be making decisions more? As the companies are getting bigger, I feel like there's more politics, more roadblocks of decisions, or has to get approval and all that.
Yeah.
How can that be reduced?
You just get rid of all that. I remember in one organisation there was a document that was about this thick of all the different rules. So it was a bit of a joke actually. We just took it out and put a single piece of paper in it which says use your best judgment. So
I love that.
And there were still some rules and processes and things around, but I'm just trying to send a signal that no one's going to get thrown out for using the best judgment and taking a call on something. So I think that the culture that you create of a willingness to question the status quo, have a go at things and risk. But there's a lot of, I think, misnomers around empowerment. Like if you're empowering people, it doesn't actually bring chaos. It actually brings high degrees of accountability because you're agreeing on an outcome, getting very clear on why you're there, what you're doing, what outcome you're trying to produce. Do you have enough resources to be able to do that? When's that going to happen? And holding people accountable to that.
Yeah.
And if that's aligned to a clear set of priorities, then you can empower people. If you don't have the right culture and if you don't have a clear set of outcomes, empowering people will bring chaos.
Yeah. And interestingly, only recently I read a book actually from my first guest, Jason Smith. He said that every company thinks they have a great culture. And that was like, what? I literally was brainstorming what are unique selling points of my company. And I said, we have a really great culture. And I was just shocked to know that everyone thinks the same about their culture. So is this true for the companies that you've worked for? Everyone kind of thinks that they have a great culture. And how do culture go wrong? And how can we improve it? I know it's a big question, but yeah.
Sure. Look, I ran large companies.
Yeah.
Great culture and large companies don't often go together.
But they think they have a great culture.
Oh, I think actually with larger companies, I think a lot of them at the top end of the business, they think they do. But the people who actually do the real work in the companies, guys, it's just terrible. Can't get anything done. It's just frustrating. Takes forever to do stuff. So a lot of those frustrations, I think, sit in the real world, but in the boardrooms and the senior C-suite, no, we've got a great culture. We have our orange bean bags and our coffee machine. We're kind of done. So I think it's a challenge because I think to have a truly great culture as a leader, you have to be willing to have a high degree of flexibility and recognize that you may not be the smartest person in the room.
In short, the bigger you are, the less of a culture you really have, or at least the good culture is just belongs in the boardroom there. Okay, looking back at all of your time in business, what would you say your proudest moments were in business?
Wow. Look, I think the Gloria Jean's turnaround was kind of mission impossible, and it was a massive turnaround.
So what happened, and what did that turnaround look like?
Okay, so what I inherited when I walked in was an organisation that was 40 countries. The main business was in Australia.
Was it started in Australia or the US?
It was actually an American brand,
Yep.
bought out by two Australians, and then because they had the Australian franchise, did well, grew, and then went back and bought the Americans out and took around the world. So it's a great
That's
success story.
interesting, yeah.
Great success story. Grew really well, and then got themselves into trouble. So sales were going back at 5%. 40% of the 400 franchise partners were really, really struggling. We had a lot of complexity. So there were sort of more layers than Walmart. 3 CEOs, like one running group, one running Australia, one running the international side of things. The culture was quite intense. So lots of people running around looking intense, but not really achieving a great deal.
How many people were in the company at this stage? So there's 40 countries. So how many?
Yeah.
What were their staff numbers?
They were franchise. So people who worked under the brand names, about 15,000.
Wow.
So they weren't all under our control, but that was people turning up with the brand on in a store around the world. So there was lots of complexity around that, all sorts of trouble. Banks were in. They wanted to asking for money back. We had ACCC were prosecuting us for unconscionable conduct. We had pending class action from the franchise partners.
This is what you inherited on that first year.
Yeah. So apart from that, it was fine. Yeah. So like day one, chaos. So it needed a lot of work, a lot of restructuring, a lot of refocusing on what built the brand in the first place, which was a focus on the average franchise partner. So the model wasn't working. And so a lot of the work was done around meeting the franchise partners, understanding what their frustrations were, recalibrating the business around getting that right, and then looking at the infrastructure and the financial models behind that, and making the adjustments we had to make. So within 18 months, the average franchise partner is 25% better off. And I'm very proud of that because they were really in trouble. And we actually had to make the sort of paradoxical challenge was, the funders wanting their money back.
Wow.
But the average franchise partner was losing out. And often with franchise, they're the ones that do lose out. So I wanted to reverse that, which we did largely do. So then sales were going ahead at 5%. The average franchise partner was a lot better off. The banks had gone away. The ACCC had gone away, and the legal stuff had all been sorted out. And then shortly after that, the organisation sold for $160 million.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Would you say that how they got themselves into that mess, is it because they were growing too fast, too aggressive of like the growth numbers, and then hence they didn't have time to really take care of people along the way, or what would you say that got them there?
I think with all I don't think it was a deliberate thing. I think that sometimes these things happen in that environment. Sometimes you can believe your own press. You can also think that because it worked 5 years ago, it's going to work today. Or even if it worked last year, it's going to work today. Things change, market changed, and the whole coffee culture in Australia had completely changed from when they started. A lot of independents had grown up. So although the types of consumers that would walk in through a Gloria Jean store were different. Like if you just wanted a coffee before, you could get it at the Gloria Jean's. If you wanted coffee, you were interested in coffee, you're more likely to go to an independent, less likely to go into a Gloria Jean store.
That's right.
And the formats were quite large in an expensive environment, Westfield rents and things. So the model itself, I think, got challenged. And that expansion, when things are expanding, people tend to overlook some of the risks, I think.
And through that journey, you had to come up with all these strategies. How much of it was from Jesus, where you had to turn around and go, God help me, I don't know how to do this?
Yeah, look, I think the fact that the thing turned around was a miracle. There's no doubt about that. Like it was just broken. So give him glory for that. The other side of that coin is always the hard work of a lot of individuals doing the right thing. And I thought the nice thing about Gloria Jean's was I brought a couple of people into it, but largely the people who were the architects of the solutions and made it work were already there in the organization. So, you talked before about culture. With the right culture and the right leadership, creating the right environment, you can get a different outcome. And I think that was largely proved by that on scale across, a large organization.
Yeah. So I know that you mentioned earlier on you had the surgery from your, was it aneurysms? I can't even pronounce it.
Yeah.
Would you say that is one of the biggest challenges that you've gone through, or was there another challenge that you could share?
Yeah, look, I think that was it was a bit of a shock. It wasn't on my plan for 2024. So it was a bit of a shock, a bit of an intervention, and just coming out the other side of it now. So significant, definitely. Yeah. But the alternatives would have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
So grateful for the intervention.
And looking back now, why do you think it happened to you in a sense of like what lesson have you gained from that we can all learn from about life, about how short life is?
Yeah. I think there is something about being aware of your mortality or having a challenge that makes you sort of think and go, okay, what are my priorities? For me, I think it was a number of things. There's we make plans and we decide what we're going to do, but occasionally something happens. So I think holding on to those things loosely I think there's some wisdom in that. There's a bit of a lesson out of this. Putting love before wealth. Like at the end of the day, the relationships we have are more important than the money we might make, and we get so focused on building wealth or doing whatever we're doing around business. I think that's important. The foundational principles of health that we all know and often take for granted. Exercise well, sleep well, have good relationships, have people in your life who quite willing to tell you to pull your head in. Staying connected, spiritual journey, all those things are super important and foundational. Eat well, etc. So we know what they are, but often we make them a lower priority. So it was a good reminder to, because I passed 60 last year, and so I started doing this whole thing around 20 good summers. What can I put into my life to be able to manage those things foundationally? So this was a sort of hyper focus on on that coming out of the back of this.
Yeah. So prior to it happening, were you already intentional with your life planning and work-life balance, or was it not existent and now it is?
Yeah, no. I was reasonably good, I think. So this is more a dial up and a good reminder. I probably just added that extra dimension of urgency and importance around some of those things.
Yeah. What would you say to those, YPOers, entrepreneurs that are like trying to take their company to the next level and IPO it and go, look, just wait till I get that.
Yeah.
And then, life will be easier. Like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, look, I think mid-career I was very much like that. It was very much around next goal, next job, next, the more success, etc. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And what I've found is with the leaders that I work with now, most of them are sort of mid-size entrepreneurial companies, sort of 50, 100, 200 million revenues, often entrepreneurial sole owners. They get to a certain stage, they've done really, really well, they've built something because they're resilient, they've got heaps of energy, they're just, I love them, they're great. So they're just a lot of fun. But often that success comes at a price. So, broken relationships and other issues and challenges, health challenges and whatever. I think the sustainability of life should make us think about key priorities and life balance. Relationships love's more important than wealth. We often talk about making money, having good relationships and health. And if you ask people to put those in a priority, they'll talk about, relationships and health is more important than money. And yet you look
at the calendar.
Yeah, exactly. So you pursue money and then, you do damage to your health and relationships. So trying to find a balance in there. When you work that out, let me know and then we'll both know. Like it's not an easy thing. It's a movable feast. And I think it has seasons in it as well.
Yeah.
So there are times to, work really hard for a season for a reason.
Yeah.
But at some point it needs to be rebalanced and recalibrated.
Well, I mean, you are still happily married. I've seen your podcast where you had your daughter, and I feel like you've also raised amazing kids as well. Any tips around maintaining that kind of passion in your relationship and raising ambitious and, kids that are wanting to do good as well? I really want to hear. I've got 3 kids, and I just want to get the hack as well to make sure that I can mold them in the right way. Otherwise,
secret sauce.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure there is one. But marry well, I think is good. Like Helen's incredible. We've been married for 33 years. Still, if I have any time, I want to spend it with her. Like she's still very much in love even after all this time, which is great. The kids have left home, which is awesome. But look, I think the priorities is really key. Like we've sort of balanced that between us, and I think as the kids have grown up, they've either been more connected to her or more connected to me, depending on what age. Really enjoyed them actually as adults having left home. Sounds a bit weird, but I think we talk more now than we did when they were teenagers, sort of coming and going. So I think it's the staying connected is massive. Just loving them, staying connected. My kids are the 3 of them are very different. And I think it's the same with your teams as a leader, recognizing that everyone needs to be treated differently. Everyone has different priorities, different personalities, different ways of being, created in different ways, different skills and talents and abilities. And so just being mindful of that and treating them differently. There's a lot of people say, treat everybody the same. Well, no, everybody's different. Get to know your team, get to know your kids.
Does it mean that like one of your kid might be you're giving them tough love, the other one is more like require more support for them to grow?
Absolutely.
Is that what it is?
For sure. Yeah. And that sounds sort of disparate and unreasonable, but it's true. It's the same with leadership teams as well, I think.
And how do you instill the Christian faith to your kids? I mean, right now my kids are struggling to go to church because they're little and they're like, oh, do we have to go again?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I don't want to force them because I discovered Christianity on my own, and it was so liberating because no one forced me. I found it.
Yeah.
But then I also wish that I grew up with it because then maybe I wouldn't suffer so much.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that kind of guiding them, wanting them to appreciate it and see it without turning them off from the very thing that you're trying to get them into?
Oh, look, I think it's a difficult question. I certainly the fruit of it is amazing. Like seeing them, the 3 of them are all following God, and my brothers came to the Lord as well later in life, and their kids, a lot of them are serving the Lord as well. So we went to a wedding of a nephew the other day, and it's a beautiful testimony to Jesus. Just seeing this, and I had this quiet moment, just looking at this next generation of people finding sort of joy and peace in that, and that's, and I put that down to just God's grace and mercy to see that next generation doing that. I don't think we can. I think conversion is it's a spiritual thing, and only the Holy Spirit can convict people and call them. But you can certainly create an environment where that's possible. So we Helen and I have tried to genuinely live our Christian life in front of them. When and they say, Dad, you didn't have to go to church when you were little. And then I know. But when they became teenagers, we did something a little bit unusual. We said, you have to go to church, but it doesn't have to be our one. So you can go wherever you like. And
but up to this point, do you feel like they've already understood, the Christian faith or Jesus? Like they get it, they just don't want to do it your way. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it was just a part of our life. So we didn't have, you have to do Bible studies and you have to do this, but we encouraged them to get involved and do things, and around Christian families, and they went to church with us. But as they got older, I don't think God has grandchildren. Like you have to have your own walk with Him at the end of the day. It's not about relying on your parents' faith. So we encourage them to sort of explore and do that. And this way of you don't have to come to our church. My son said, no, I'm happy to stay here, and he's kind of into the music and things, so he loves all that side of things. Both the girls went, yep, we want to go somewhere else. Yep, go for it. You have to go somewhere, but you don't have to go here. And they did, and they sort of found their own. So they had to find their own kind of expression and connection with him.
Yeah. Can you highlight a little bit about your 3 children, what they're up to? I know we were talking a little bit about it before.
Yeah, so
you can always do a shout out.
So shout out, yeah. So my oldest one, Peter, she's 27. She's living in Brisbane. She's 100 metres from the beach, so I think she's living the perfect life at the moment. She's got a ESG consultancy, and she also helps people through their B Corp. She's a B Corp consultant as well. So she's doing that, starting the entrepreneurial journey, which is awesome because she rings me like, oh, it's terrible, and then, oh, it's great, and the usual ups and downs of entrepreneurs. So she's doing all that. My son is trying to pursue the music side of things. So he was on Triple J the other day, which was good. So he's Spotify. So he's trying to work out, can he make money?
So he's a singer.
He's a singer, songwriter, and so right into the music side of things. So super productive in that area. And then my youngest one is just finishing her counselling degree. So she's currently doing her prac in trauma counselling. So yeah,
that's
so 3
amazing.
very different kids doing different things. Trying to work out life.
So if your kids were sitting here right now, I guess what would you want to say to them? In all time, they're all sitting here.
Yeah, look, I'm very proud of my kids. They're great. So I'm very biased. And
Got the best kids, just like the companies that say they have the best culture.
Best kids, got the best kids. They're great. So I have a good relationship with them, which is awesome. And I just want to love them and support them in whatever they choose to do. So some of it I'm going,
and then remember to marry well.
Marry well. Seriously, marry. It's such a big decision. Life partner is massive. Massive. So just think about that.
Well, what's next for you, Mark?
What's
your next decade?
I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. So a big chunk of my time is spent with leaders, working on them with strategy, helping them grow as leaders. And also I've been putting advisory boards together as well, which is kind of fun. So I love that. That's very sustainable for me. I'm quite happy to do that as long as people see the value in it. And also, so that's lead well, live well. And then the Monday movement is my expression of faith and work, how to integrate those two things. And so there's books and courses and whatever. So look, I think I'm still going to work on both those things over time. I think retirement is an artificial construct, so no intention of doing that. I'll still try and influence and do the things that I do.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be in those 2 areas. Yeah.
Final question as we wrap up is, if someone is wanting to either start a business or maybe want to just take that leap to pursuing a dream that they've always had, how would you advise them in terms of what kind of faith that they need to believe in order to succeed to the next level? Just like based on all of your challenges, all the times that you doubted yourself and yet you were able to push through.
Yeah.
What could you share to them?
I think people on their deathbed don't go, gee, I wish I'd taken things a little safer. I wish I'd been more cautious. It's really about, I think, sometimes we just need to take risks. And do a jump and learn something out of it if it goes horribly wrong, which occasionally it will do. That's always the downside. So I think action over inaction, and then learn as you go. It's much easier to move things around if they're moving. From a faith perspective, look, for me, my trust in God and who He's built me to be and what He's asking me to do is a massive part of that. I just encourage people to, explore the spiritual side of life as well as the physical side of life. There's definitely a component there that's worth considering for sure.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for your time. Really
Absolute
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Good to see you.